Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another video from inside the Eve Echo's final test. Now today we're going to be looking at the Condor, which is a Tech 2 frigate from the Caldari Empire, and we're going to be looking at how you would use this thing first of all as a stepping stone to getting your Kestrel if you're going to be a missile pilot, and then secondly as to actually what you can do with these if you have 0.1 million of them, 101,000 of these things sitting in your corporation cargo hold like we do. So ultimately, what can you use a Condor for? What does it actually do? What is it good at? That kind of thing. It's a bit of a meme. I've no idea where on earth the idea to build 100,000 of these blasted things came from. Someone built, I think, 1,000 and then just went, you know what, let's see how many of them we can make, and we're currently sitting at 100,000. I think the aim is to see if we can hit 1 million Condors in our hangar by the end of the beta and see if that breaks anything other than my mind. Anyway, before we jump in on this one, if you do enjoy the video, let me know by hitting like on it, subscribe to the channel for all things Eve Echoes, and ding that notification bell so that you know when the next video goes live. Now, if you've got a particular ship like the Condor you want to see me have a look at, if you've got a topic you want me to cover, that kind of thing, let me know in the comment section below. I'll see what I can do. Of course, as well, come find me on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, yada yada yada, and the Catskull Cartel Discord. Public channels there are full of some very friendly folk who love chatting all things Eve Echoes and will help out with any questions you happen to have. That said, as well, talking about help, if you do want to go the extra mile and help support this channel, come join me on Patreon. Every single dollar, every single pledge really does help. It's a massive boost to me, helps keep the channel going, and I'm so grateful for all of your support. Anyway, that all said and done, let's get on to looking at the Condor. Now, if we open up the Condor stat page, as I said, you can see it's a Tech Level 2 Caldari frigate with 2 high slots, 1 mid slot, and 2 low slots. Now, a Tech 2 with that mid slot, this exemplifies everything that I hate about the Rifter. The Rifter is one of my favourite Minmatar ships in EVE Online, and it's just terrible in EVE Echoes. It's literally one of those ships that you're given it early on, you kind of use it for probably half an hour to an hour just getting started, and you're going to swap it for literally anything else as soon as you can. The Condor, on the other hand, yes, of course, it is a stepping stone to getting yourself a Kestrel. You're not going to be in Tech Level 2 for long. You will hit Tech Level 3 surprisingly quickly. The Kestrel is Tech Level 3, and if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say the Kestrel, there is a video on this channel, I'll see if I can put a link on screen now, for the Kestrel and going kiting in a Kestrel. A Kestrel is a Tech Level 3 frigate that you can get very early on in the game, and you can actually get up to quite comfortably Tech 7 anomalies with it. It's insane what you can do with a Kestrel. So if you're a missile pilot, you're going to go into a Kestrel at Tech 3. This therefore becomes a very short stopping gap between the two, but it does still have uses afterwards thanks to how cheap it is to produce, hence we have 100,000 of them, and its roll bonus. Stasis weather fire capacity need reduction by 80%. Also, for every skill you have in frigate command, you will get an additional 5% small missile torpedo damage, and if like me you're a frigate pilot, that means you're going to have 5 levels in that very early on for an additional 25% small missile and torpedo damage. Other than that, its overall defense is pitiful. It's a tiny little thing that's not really doing much. Flight velocity is fairly standard for a frigate, slightly faster warp speed than you might expect at 5.5. Power grid and capacitor, a very small cargo hold, is okay for how cheap this thing is. It's not a cargo runner. You're not going to be cargo running in this. That's not what it's for. But looking at here, I have equipped nothing but Mark III gear, simply because I want to showcase what this would be like if you were if you're a pilot who's doing your first couple of like ratting anomalies, maybe a couple of the early encounters, that kind of thing, just to get a feel for what's going on, the kind of equipment that you're going to have here. Now you can see that the build I've got is capacitor stable, which means I can have everything here running and active, and I'm not going to run out of capacitor. It recharges as fast, if not faster, than it drains. Defensive capabilities, I've managed to boost this up to 1636. That's thanks to mainly some of the skills that I have, plus some of the fittings. You can see, looking at the armor, hull, and shield, this is definitely a shield ship. So in the low slot, I've gone for a Mark III small shield extender. The reason I go for shield extenders where I can is ultimately, it's just flat up 442 shield increase there. And at the bottom, once you activate this, it boosts by an additional 442 there for 25 seconds as well. It just means that you kind of preempt when you're going to take damage, and you put on extra shields rather than just repairing or boosting the ones that you have. It's a little less on the capacitor, and ultimately works out easier to use and better. Because we're using quite a small fast ship, an afterburner just to give it that extra kick is always helpful too. And talking about speeds, the fact that this has a web of fire bonus means of course I'm going to put a web of fire into that mid slot as well. Now the optimal range of the web of fire is 10.6. Yes, the Condor has a boost to the web capacitor need, so it uses less capacitor, but it doesn't affect the range. The range is still very short at 10.6. That means ultimately Mark III small missile launchers are probably a bit overkill with a missile range of 21.45. You may decide that actually you do want to go up to down to torpedoes and use those for a flat damage boost. Do I have any torpedoes to hand that I can quickly showcase how those compare? I don't think I do, but we'll just scroll down the list anyway. Yes, I do, but they're Republic Fleet ones, which kind of would be cheating. We'll have a look later once I've showcased these things early on. So we're going to come back and look at where you go from here and what you might want to do with a Condor later on. So anyway, let's undock. I've got a couple of Tier 3 anomalies around in system at the moment, so I'm going to jump into one of those and we're going to see how well we can do. Because again, this is a Tech 2 frigate. It is not designed necessarily to go up for a Tech Level 3. So Angel's small anomaly, here we are. We're going to warp into this one at a bit of a range. Never go into 0 if you can help it. Always look at what your weapon range is and go in somewhere at least around there. So I'm going to go into 27, start stacking some of these modules there as well. 27 means I'm going to be slightly out of my missile range of 21.45, but that's fine. That gives me a few seconds just to get everything into order when we land, when we arrive at the anomaly, without everything just shooting at me instantly. So here we are, I've got a Gisty Breacher and a Gisty Thrasher. Now from those two, I know from experience that the Thrasher is the one that I need to worry about most. Now orbiting here, you can see that this thing wants me to orbit around 8 km margin. That's fine by me. I will activate the torpedoes, and we're going to put the afterburner on as well to get sorry, not the torpedoes, the missiles, and I'll put the afterburner on as well just to get some extra speed. You can see already we're well over the 1,100 mark, moving in quite quickly there towards this Thrasher, and we will be firing the missiles as we go. Now you see, I'm starting to hit the Thrasher as we're getting closer, and I do a fair whack of damage. Now yes, part of that is going to be with the skills that I've got, but ultimately the Condor itself is just not a bad ship. And if I put the web of fire on here, you'll see as well that should activate. There we go. That Thrasher is now also moving slower, which makes it easier to hit. And if we do an observation on that, you can see the web of fire in effect there, holding it in position. Pop goes the Thrasher. Now we're going to move on to the Breacher. Again, let's set an orbit around the Breacher. It should manually orbit to my optimal distance of about the 10 km mark. And we're going to swap the web of fire across here as well. I'm out of range. Now I should be able to get it now that we're within the 10 km margin. There we are. The Breacher has been locked, and down it goes in literally 2 hits. Now you can see I'm starting to take a little bit of damage, so I am going to put the shield extender on, which will shoot me up to, whoa, 155% shield. That was bigger than I thought it was going to be. Being at 155% shield just means that any damage I take in the meantime is going to go off the extended shield rather than my raw shield, and my raw shield can be boosting itself back up and repairing itself and getting itself back up to 100% underneath that extension, if that makes sense. I've got an extension over the top that has pushed my shields beyond the 100%. When that comes down, hopefully my shields should have repaired a little bit underneath. Anyway, let's webify that one as well. We're going to come out of the camera view back to looking at the Condor. Let's take out that Thrasher. Next volley should get it out of the sky. Here it comes. And then we're going to swap across to the Probe. Now, I do like probes. Probes are a pretty cool ship, actually. If you haven't already, if I've put it up, you should look out for the exploration frigate video for the Probe, and I talk about what you can do with these things. They've got a lot of cool little tricks up their sleeves. But again, just the amount of damage I need to orbit in at a closer range. The amount of damage you can do to a probe is to a probe with a Condor here is insane. This is a Tech 2 ship comfortably doing a Tier 3 anomaly. Now, I'm not going to sit here and clear out this entire anomaly. I've got better things to do than waste your time just boring through all this, so I am going to... apparently that was the end of the anomaly anyway. I am going to warp back to base. I don't need to worry about the loot here. There's not going to be anything overly useful to us at this stage in the beta. Obviously, if that's you ratting and you're out there doing stuff, yes, loot everything. early on when you're playing, every single module will help. Ultimately, yes, it means if my ship gets blown up, if this Condor gets blown up, I would have other Mark III missile launchers and turrets and that around to use, but quite frankly, we've got hundreds, literally hundreds of Mark III modules currently sitting in the hold, so I don't really need to worry about those. Anyway, let's come back to station, and we'll talk about where you can go from here with a Condor. Now, if you are starting off as a Caldari pilot, or if you're going as a Minmatar pilot and just looking to missile skill up into other things there, then there is a certain path you would want to take. Now, if we've looked at the Condor, you've seen that it does get an advantage for the frigate command. And frigate command, as a flat skill, gives you extra velocity and a reduction to your inertia modifier, which means you can turn and you reach warp quicker, that kind of thing. But the frigate velocity, obviously, is just an extra speed there, 25% increase and 25% reduction accordingly to each of those. Ultimately, it depends what you want to do. Now, if you're going from a Condor straight into a Kestrel, and you intend to keep the Kestrel for a while, Frigate Command is not a bad thing to get to. In fact, I would probably take Frigate Command to at least level 4, just to have that there. And when you do start off in Eve Echoes, you want to get every skill that you want to level 4 before you take it up to level 5, and I'll explain that again in just a moment. So obviously, if you're going from a Condor into a Kestrel and then maybe something like a Corax or a Tal War later on, the most important thing is not going to be your frigate skills, because the Corax and the Tal War are both destroyers, but the small missile torpedo operation skill, because that is going to affect both the Condor, the Kestrel, and the Tal War and the Corax, because they all use small missiles. Now, this particular skill gives you, at level 5, small missile torpedo damage of plus 20% and a small missile torpedo explosion radius of 15. Again, I'm going to do a video on what explosion radius and all that actually means with missiles. That's not something I'm going to cover here. Do keep an eye out for that, because it's something a lot of people misunderstand and it's a tricky thing to explain, but I'm going to try my best. At level 4, you can see that this will give you small missile torpedo damage plus 16% and a reduction to the explosion radius of 10%, which means you are going to be 10% better at hitting moving targets, which is just incredibly useful. Ultimately, to take that to level 5, you get an additional 4% torpedo missile damage and 5% extra of the explosion radius. But in order to get that additional 4 and 5%, if we look at the amount of skill points involved, well, level 1 through 4 is going to cost you around about the 50,000 skill point mark. Getting from level 4 to level 5, on the other hand, is going to cost you 210,745. Literally more than 4 times what it took to get you to level 4. That's why you get to level 4 and then you stop training that skill. Once you've got small missile torpedo operation at level 4, go and train small missile torpedo upgrade to level 4. Same kind of thing, small missile torpedo damage goes up by 12%, the flight time goes up by 7%, which is range increase, and the torpedo velocity, how fast it gets there, goes up by 2%. The additional skill point of going into 5 would give you 3% additional torpedo damage, 3% additional flight range, and an additional 2% on the speed that it gets there. But again, looking at how much it will cost you to do that, level 1, 2, 3, and 4 combined comes in at, using a quick bit of maths there, around about the 66,000 mark, whereas the level 5 alone is 316,117. It's more than 5 times. More than 5 times the skill point investment you've put in to get from level 1 through 4. So basically you get small missile torpedo operation to 4, small missile torpedo upgrade to 4, then go back and do things like your like your frigate command, if that's what you want to go to, or destroyer command, perhaps even things like shield skills. Ultimately, if you're going things like Kestrel tanking, then things like afterburner or micro warp drive operation. Again, just because these make those better, get those up to level 4 as well before coming back and pushing up to level 5. In fact, other than in the beta here, in the beta I tend to just get it up to 5 because it's nice and round, but in live, what I would ultimately do is kind of showcased by if I go into weapon technology and look at some of the higher level skills that I've been training, and for things like battleships and battle cruisers. There is one here somewhere. What I tend to do, there we are, advanced small cannon upgrade. I will hit 4 with small cannon upgrade until I decide that I want to get up to 4 on advanced small cannon upgrade. That 5 on small cannon upgrade is now the barrier. I train that. I immediately train the small cannon up there, and you can see again level 1, 2, 3, and 4 are much cheaper than level 5. So you basically train to level 4. You pause until you want to get to advanced 4, then you do basic 5, advanced 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you go from there like that. Now, the aim there is that you are putting as few skill points in unnecessary things as possible. You're getting the most bang for your buck with your skill points. That means that ultimately, you as well, as I said, by focusing on the missiles, the small missiles, rather than things like Destroyer Command or Frigate Command, you can choose where you go from there. So we've started with the basic Condor. As I said, most Condor pilots are going to want to go into something like a Kestrel. Once you hit a tier 3, once you can unlock Tech 3, the Kestrel is right there. Go watch the video on Kestrel kiting. This thing is insane. In Minmatar, you could go for a Breacher. They're just not nearly as good. The fact that these get those additional torpedo velocity just means the extra range on those missiles and torpedoes. That's what helps you kite with one of these things, and the additional flight velocity there for Frigate Command if you decide, like me, you want to be a frigate pilot. Otherwise, that's where you would go. Later on, you can start looking at things like the Condor 2, which is an interceptor. That is used for getting up close and personal to things, locking them down with Weber fires and warp disruptors, holding them in position there. And again, further on still, no, that's the Manticore. Little bit further up, once you hit Tech 8, which is going to be locked behind Alpha, you have the Condor Interceptor. This is ultimately your proper interceptor. This is a speedy little thing that you're going to get right up into their face, disrupt them into position, hold them down with that additional warp scrambler strength, and you're not really going to do much in the way of damage. You do get, if you've got Advanced Frigate Command, an additional 50% small missile torpedo damage, so it's like running at 4.5 of the high slots rather than just 3, but still. It's not overly a damage boat under the frigates. If you're looking to be a missile damager, I would then move across into the destroyer tree, into destroyers, things like the Corax. You do get a Corax trainer, actually, as part of the advanced tutorials currently in the beta. I hope that goes into live, because that's a pretty decent ship. 3 high slots, which you're going to put your missiles on. They get an additional 25% extra range, so you can really keep some range on this thing, do really some nice kiting with that. You then move up to the Corax destroyer when you can, just because it's got slightly better statistics to it, and maybe eventually even the Corax sniper or the Corax assault. These are cool little ships that can do a lot of damage with those missiles. Again, don't just get stuck on Caldari, though, if you are going missiles. I would argue that one of the best missile ships in the game is indeed the Talwar. This thing was amazing back in the OBT, and so few people were using it. Again, it gets that roll bonus of additional torpedo velocity, gets nice torpedo damage there, but it gets reductions to the warp drive signature radius and an increase to stasis Weber fire, so you can just kite with this a little bit better than you can. They also tend to be cheaper because not so many people are buying them. From there, again, sticking with the small missile theme, you can then come up into things like Mordu's Legion. And of course, everyone knows where I'm going on this part. We are, of course, talking about the Gamma, and I'm going to go in on full details on this one. I would have loved to have done a video on this during the final test, because it's such a cool ship. I just could not get my hands on them. The Mordu's Legion ship debris were in the beta, just extraordinarily rare, so of course anyone who had them held onto them, probably to build Orthruses and stuff like that, but the Gamma itself is insane. If we look at this thing, you can see here, small missile torpedo damage goes up by 20% for each level in advanced small missile, so it can get a whopping 100% boost there. So it's like it's got, I mean, how many fittings does it have? 3 high slots. It's like it's got 6 missile launchers on it. They get an additional 25% range, just like the Corax and all that do, plus a additional 200% for the roll bonus. That means if you've got advanced small missile torpedo operation up to 5 and the missile torpedo velocity bonus for the roll bonus, you're sitting there already with something that is going up by quite literally 250%. So if you've got a 50-kilometer range, you're suddenly going to, you do the math, it's insane. You've then got the warp scramblers, the warp disruptors, all of that as well means that you can kite even better. If you watch the Kestrel video, I do say one of the problems you're going to have is that if you don't control your distance and something gets too close to you, you are hummed. Whereas the Gamma itself, that if something gets close, bam, you hit it with a warp scrambler, it slows down while you keep your distance and you get your range. That is going to be your ultimate goal if you're going for a small missile kiter, and these things are insane, and I want one. I want one. If I manage to get one in the last day here, then I will do an entire video on that on its own, but unfortunately I don't think I'm getting a chance to, so I thought I'd throw that in with the Condor video. Anyway, folks, that about wraps up everything I wanted to say about getting started with missiles as a missile pilot, getting started with Caldari or Minmatar, where you would go with the Condor, what you would do to get that into a Kestrel, and then where you can go from there, what skills you should be looking at training, and so on and so forth. I hope that's given you some inspiration and some ideas of how to play as a missile pilot. Do let me know in the comment section down below if you've got any questions, anything I didn't explain too well that you'd just like a bit more clarity on. I'm always open to that. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching right the way to the end. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.